In this module, we're going to describe the IDMS checklist. The objective of this module is to provide you with the information and background to ensure your installations are successful. We'll go over 4 main areas for this piece. We'll describe the architecture. This will help give you an overview of how the IDMS works with external systems. We'll go through a requirements checklist to show you exactly what's required before you even begin the installation. Next, we'll delve into certificates to describe what certificates are required, as well as how to ensure that these certificates are trusted on the IDMS system. And finally, we'll go through the system validation wizard as we step through each connection to verify the IDMS can connect to each external system. So in terms of the overall architecture, the IDMS communicates with 5 systems. The most important one is the Microsoft SQL Server. The IDMS reads its configuration database from the SQL Server for operations for identity proofing as well as general lifecycle management features. The next element that's important is the connection to the HSM, or the Hardware Security Module. The IDMS stores its cryptography keys in this HSM for secure storage of keys that encrypt critical data within the SQL Server. The next element that's critical is the HID CMS server. The IDMS connects to the CMS server to provision data for the credentialing process. The next system is the directory. The IDMS will query the directory information to help with the request processing of the identity lifecycle. Finally, an overlooked system but an extremely critical one is the Certificate Authority CRL list. It's critical that the IDMS be able to reach the CA CRL list in order to perform the validation of all the certificates that are used in the authentication transactions. Numerous times this is overlooked, which can require or result in numerous errors. It's critical that the installation checklist within the install guide be referred to. Here you will notice step-by-step requirements for each element for the installation process. Let's briefly touch on all of them. The first one is the SSL certificate for the IDMS server. This is the SSL certificate that will be installed in the IIS application server for the IDMS server. The next one is the client certificate that's used to connect to the CMS server. The IDMS will connect to CMS to provision identity data. Therefore, it's critical that the IDMS have the client certificates necessary to connect to the CMS server. Number 3, the client certificates for the IDMS server. During the installation, the installer will connect to the IDMS server using a client certificate to configure and finalize the installation. Number 4, the database DNS name is required so the IDMS can be configured to connect to the database. Also, database account and update read permissions, which we'll cover momentarily in greater detail. The IDMS requires read and write access to the database in order to be able to write various configuration data. The next one is the directory organizational unit account information. This is the target that will allow IDMS to search the correct OU within the directory to locate the user for the request and sponsorship phases. The next one is a directory username and password. The IDMS will connect with read-only access to the directory to query the information for a given user. Also, firewall access to ports 443, or if the IDMS is co-located with the CMS server, 444. The number 9, the IDMS also needs access to the HSM from the IDMS and the CMS server, so the IDMS can connect to the HSM for secure key storage. Also, it's critical the IDMS server have network access to connect to the database server, as well as have the OU mapping for the CMS. And finally, depending on the features implemented by IDMS, connections to the CMS configuration table is required to help generate the reports. When getting ready to install the IDMS, the following permissions are required. You will need local admin on the operating system where the IDMS is being installed. You will need the ability to configure and install IIS where the IDMS is being installed. Also, the ability to issue SSL and user certificates, although most of the time a PKI group will issue these for you. Also, you'll need DBA access. First, you'll need the SA account to install the CMS and IDMS database, and then you'll need DB Reader, and Alter permissions on the IDMS in order to finalize the installation. Also, you'll need Active Directory authentication permissions, and you'll need assistance with firewall management permissions should you need port 444, or if you're being blocked for port 443. Another critical element are the certificates. Before the installation even occurs, it's recommended that you have access to the CMS operator certificate. What we do here to help minimize errors is perform connections to the CMS portal itself. Verify that the certificate has been installed before even beginning the IDMS installation. The next certificate that's required is the IDMS operator certificate. In the installation, this certificate will be used to create a seed user to allow the installation to continue, as well as perform other configuration items. Next, the IDMS SSL certificate is required. This is the certificate that's installed on Microsoft IIS to enforce SSL server-side authentication. Finally, the trusted certificates for each of these certificates are required to be installed in the operating system itself. We'll go through steps to validate that each certificate can be trusted and the IDMS can utilize them for authentication transactions.